Hello everyone, welcome to this week's video from the Purple Penny. My name's Mark, I own and run the Purple Penny. The Purple Penny is a family owned coin and banknote dealership. We buy and sell coins, banknotes and collectibles, and most of it we buy over the counter here in the shop, and we sell it out through the shop here in Mawson Lakes, which is open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday, and also through our website, thepurplepenny.com. We've been here in this shop for 7 years. Next week is our 7th birthday, and as you probably know, we are drawing to a close. We're planning on finishing up here at the beginning of August, and the Purple Penny may or may not be operating concern after that. The Purple Penny itself has been operating for almost 18 years, which is quite remarkable. Now, what's happened in the last week? Well, before we get into that, we'll say a few hellos, because there are a few people here that join in every week, and I'd like to say hello to everyone. Wouldn't do these videos if I couldn't do it live. Apologies to the people on YouTube that watch these afterwards. I wish I could talk to you live as well, but we do get some good comments over there. If you're wondering, all of the videos that we've posted up in the last 6.5 years or so are over there on YouTube, several hundred of them, and if you really want to see my face, you can head over there and watch them. It's a great viewing, that's for sure. Hello Peter, hello Alex, hello Ted, hello Ian, hello Patrick, hello Wendy, hello Tanya, hello Alan, and hello John. Thank you everyone for joining in. Now, last week was Bluey week. This one was an Australia Post release. I'm not sure if it's the third or fourth Bluey release, but this one is an Australia Post Bluey release, and I'll just go into what that means to us as authorised dealers for the Royal Australian Mint, because we are authorised dealers for the Australian Mint, which means that for some releases we do get an allocation of products from the Royal Australian Mint. But this particular release is a bit different to the normal release that we see, and I thought I would just go full disclosure on that this week, given that there's a lot of misinformation floating around out there about authorised dealers and Bluey coins and things like that. But before we do that, we'll just jump into some graphs. Actually, before we do that, we'll just do this. We're closed on Thursday and Friday of next week. Simple as that, just Thursday and Friday of next week, 21st, 22nd of May. We just have to duck off and do something for a couple of days. Website will continue functioning as normal. There won't be any mailing happening on those 2 days. So apologies to anyone in Adelaide who, I think I'm back. I think the wireless went down there for a minute. There's always something else that can go wrong. I hope I'm back. Right. We are closed on 21st, 22nd of May. Apologies for the dropout there. There was a bit of a problem with the network, I believe, judging by the various dings and dongs this computer was making. But we seem to be up and running now. Now let's jump into the graphs that Peter was kind enough to create for us. Peter Andrews is a well-known numismatist in Melbourne. He's the editor of Independent Coin News, Australia's best coin magazine. It's an online magazine, and the best thing about it is it's free. Very well edited and well worth going over to independentcoinnews.com or searching for Independent Coin News on Facebook and joining up to the group over there. 2026 Blue. Perhaps we're back this time. I've just had a couple of very deep breaths and thought carefully about my words. I have no idea what happened then, but everything died. So we're back again. We're going to jump into the graphs that Peter Andrews created for us for the Bluey silver, the Bluey coin release that happened last week. The 2026 Bluey silver proof, mintage of 12,000 of those coins, primarily released through Australia Post, with a small number being released, we believe, through the Royal Australian Mint. They did have their ballot, the Royal Australian Mint. Release price of this coin was $115, And Peter there has, on that graph, he has listed sale prices between perhaps about $250 up to $700, with the price in the last few days settling between $300 and $400. So that's not a bad increase for those who manage to get their hands on one of these silver proofs. How many did the purple penny get allocated? 0. We didn't get allocated this coin at all, so we didn't have any of these to sell. Now, I just thought I'd stick a couple of numbers at the bottom of these slides, which is the number of post offices in Australia. The current Australia Post website says that there's about 3,400 plus post offices around Australia. A report that I found from 2021 by Deloitte Access Economics suggested there was 4,320 post offices. So let's just say, for round numbers, there's 3,500 post offices in Australia. Total mintage of this coin, 12,000. So that means something less than 4 per post office, every post office. So if you went into your post office and they didn't have 20 of them, that's because 12,000 divided by 3,400 or 3,500 is not 20. That's why they are hard to find. The next graph that Peter was kind enough to supply is the aluminium bronze proof, which interestingly has a lower mintage than the silver proof, just a mintage of 10,500. The release price of this coin was $60, and you can see there that the price has bounced between perhaps just under $200 and just under $350. So in terms of gross profit, this is a better deal probably than the silver coin, believe it or not. Less mintage, and in terms of multiples of release price, this is probably a better deal than the silver coin. So if you manage to get your hands on this item, you've probably done better out of this one than out of the silver coin. And again, just a reminder there that if we go on the assumption that there's about 3,500 post offices around Australia, 10,500 divided by 3,500 is something like 3. That means that if all of the mintage of this coin was allocated equally amongst all the post offices in Australia, then those post offices would have 3 each. And that is why when you go into your post office, you can't find one of these coins. The next slide that Peter supplied us is the folder. Just before we go on, how many aluminium bronze proofs was the purple penny supplied during this Australia Post release? None. We didn't get allocated any of these coins. The Bluey colour sleep set. So this is the 5 coin tube and folder with a 1 in 10 chance of getting a coloured coin in the tube. And there's also the 2 spots for the coloured coins that you can get out through the till in Australia Post. You can see the prices there with the coloured coin ranging basically between $200 and $300. Peter did tell me that all of those between $200 and $300 all were buy it nows or with high starting prices. That one down there at $119 was a $119 starting bid. Again, not a bad return on investment. $34 was the price on this. I did see that, and this isn't new, I did see that there were reports of dealers selling these sets already opened, so selling them for less than release price, already opened with a non-coloured coin, selling them for obviously more than release price with a coloured coin. I even saw reports of post offices selling them that way, already opened, with all the tubes already opened. And you might say, well, that's, from our point of view, it's not something that we do. It's probably not something that we would choose to do. It's not really doing the right thing by people. But those dealers and those post offices, they own their inventory and they can do with it as they want. And they are in business. They're in the business of maximising their profit. And that's one way of doing it. Again, not something we do, but I can understand why they're doing it. What's the mintage of this? Well, it's unlimited. What does unlimited mean? It just means that Australia Post probably has an agreement in place with the Mint to keep getting these sets while they're still selling. And the actual mintage of the coloured coins and the uncoloured $2 coins will resolve itself in the next year or so and appear in an annual report. Now, as I already said, this release is different to most other releases. It's not the only release that we've had since we've been authorised dealers that are like this. I can think of the first Bluey release was like this. I don't know if you remembered the coloured 50-cent humpback whale and emperor penguin coins. They were a release that was similar to this. It wasn't an Australia Post release, but it was a release that authorised dealers did not get an allocation from the mint for. The AFL releases are like this. The coin hunt sets are like this. They are run by Australia Post. Now, I thought what I'd do here is just share with you what happens for us as authorised dealers with these particular releases, because as I said, there is a fair bit of misinformation out there about this. So 2026 Bluey release and authorised dealers. We believe that what this order is called with the Royal Australian Mint is a corporate order, and that means that the Royal Australian Mint has made these Bluey coins as a service for Australia Post. So basically Australia Post has come to them, proposed to them that they make these coins. I assume the Mint has done the design process. I don't really know exactly how that works, but Australia Post has basically paid for the minting of these coins, and as a result of that, Australia Post gets to distribute the lion's share of the mintage. I believe that the Mint has a minimum quantity of the mintage that they can distribute through their own channels. I believe that's 10%, but I wouldn't be held to that. I believe it's 10%. And certainly with all of these corporate releases that we've been involved with, the Royal Australian Mint has not been able to or chosen to allocate any coins to their dealers on release day. So they are not giving any, we are not giving an allocation of these by the Royal Australian Mint. So that's us. Okay, we didn't get an allocation of these Bluey coins to the Royal Australian Mint. So it is up to the corporate customer, if they wish, to provide an allocation to authorised dealers. And they don't have to do so. They don't have to provide an allocation of the full product range. And in the case of Australia Post, they chose to only offer dealers the $34 album and tube set. That was all dealers that were offered. They weren't offered anything else. And the discounts on those offerings are much less than what we get from the Royal Australian Mint. And I've got to say that, even the discount we get from the Royal Australian Mint isn't great. Certainly, we couldn't run the purple penny on our turnover from Royal Australian Mint products. It's not possible. We'd have to turn over Royal Australian Mint product. We'd probably have to turn over 15 to 20 times as much to keep the business viable with a shop front and everything. Right, so the dealer discounts are much lower. Australia Post requires upfront payment, so that means that we have to supply them with a credit card. There's no 30-day terms or anything. Credit card has to clear before it gets shipped. And certainly in the past, we've often received our allocation of this stuff after release day. And that's because either of delayed slow shipping, or release day is a Monday and we don't open until Wednesday, so we often get them after release day. This particular coin and tube set, we got them about 2 o'clock the day before release day. And, we weren't even 100% sure if we'd have them on release day. Now, how many did we get? Not enough to keep our regulars happy. So, that's not many. Not enough to keep our regulars happy. We were offered the sets 3 weeks before release. Very small discount. We were given half of what we asked for. Prepayment was required, and the product didn't arrive till the day before. So that's why we were very cagey leading up to this release about what we were going to get, because, we just weren't sure. We just weren't sure. Until that credit card got charged, we were not 100% sure that we were going to be getting what we were offered. And we were not offered the silver proofs, the aluminium bronze proofs, or, no offense to the people that like the Bluey stuff, I'm not even sure what the product range was. I believe there was some cards or something. We weren't offered any of that stuff. So when you are online and you see people selling multiple silvers or multiple aluminium bronze proofs or whatever, they didn't get that from the Royal Australian Mint. they're not authorised dealers who got that from the Royal Australian Mint. It is almost certainly people who have a informal arrangement with a post office, or they just go to every post office they can and buy up everything they can, or who knows how they do it. So much of coin dealing is building a network of contacts, and those people who manage to get their hands on a lot of product, they either have people going to the Mint in Canberra, or they have contacts with post offices. That's how they get it. They don't get it from the Royal Australian Mint. Okay, they're not getting it as wholesalers from the Royal Australian Mint. So that's as upfront as I can be about that. And if there's any other post office releases coming up soon, they'll almost certainly operate the same way. It's out of our hands. There's nothing we can do about it. And at the end of the day, we're doing it just because we've got a lot of loyal customers that come in here into the shop, and we want to keep them happy. Why don't we mail out this stuff? Because it is literally not worth our time. With the discount we get on this stuff, it's not worth Catherine's time putting it in a box and mailing it out. I mean, we mail at actual cost. It's not worth it. So we don't mail the stuff out. Right, so that's it for Bluey. I hope some people got what they wanted out of the ballot. There's I hear mixed stories about what people got out of the ballot. Be aware that the Mint didn't have all of the mintage to allocate via the ballot, so it was just apparently 10%. That's what I'm told, and I can see someone in the comments here has agreed with that 10%. That's what I've been heard. So it's just the way it works. It's just the way it works. Hopefully, you got what you wanted. And look, like I said the last time one of these sort of releases happened, you can buy yourself a Bluey Silver Proof for $300, or you get yourself a really nice ancient coin for $300. And I don't like to, if you collect Bluey coins, good luck to you, but I'd rather have a $300 ancient coin than a Bluey coin in a box, that's for sure. Right, I think that'll do for Bluey this week. Where are we at now? We might skip over the news, I think, because we've run out of time because of technical problems. So we'll just jump to this one. This is a poll held by Numismatic News. They're the news arm of the American Numismatic Association. And they held a poll amongst their subscribers, what matters most when buying a coin. And they were the 4 factors that they suggested were the most important: eye appeal, authenticity, condition, and value. I'm a bit confuzzled about why authenticity wasn't the first thing. Because I don't care how much eye appeal and what condition a fake coin is in, I don't want it. So authenticity should be the primary factor I would have thought when you were buying a coin, and then eye appeal and condition. Now, what's eye appeal? Eye appeal is how appealing the coin is to you, and it's not an easily quantifiable thing because it is very much dependent on the collector. A coin that I find appealing might not be appealing to someone else. There's certainly a feeling among a lot of collectors that silver coins should not be toned because that's not what they look like when they're minted, and that's absolutely correct. But if you are collecting coins that are 100 years or 200 years old, then they will be toned because silver does tarnish or tone over time. So I've given an example there of 2 1927 Parliament florins, a nice colourfully toned one on the left and a nice bright white one on the right. I'm not sure which one you prefer. I prefer the one on the left, but if you prefer the one on the right, more power to you. I've got no real problem with that. And then at the bottom there, I've got 2 1953 M pennies. One at the bottom left is red, brown and uncirculated. The one on the right is red and uncirculated. But I feel like the one on the left has more eye appeal because the one on the right has carbon streaking and a fingerprint and a few other ugly things. But there are some collectors of copper coins that only want red coins like the day they were made, similar to people who like nice bright white silver coins. So, again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if you're going to buy something that isn't modern mint product, then I'll tell you the same thing I tell everyone: buy something that speaks to you, something that moves something inside of you, that interests you, that just generates some excitement in you, and that is eye appeal. And then, of course, there's condition, and that's grade, and grading is a great big subject all to its own. It's not something that applies to buyers of modern mint product, but it does apply to older coins, circulation coins, ancient coins and things like that. And then the last factor they had there was value, and that does apply to modern coins, of course. Silver Bluey proof at $115 is probably seems like decent value. A silver Bluey proof at $700, which someone's paid for, doesn't seem like great value to me. But of course, value for coins that aren't modern mint product is a difficult thing to quantify, because value is got to do with eye appeal, condition, mintage, and all sorts of things. There's all sorts of things that affect the value of a coin, and what may seem expensive to you for a particular coin, that same coin might seem cheap to someone else who's perhaps a bit more knowledgeable in that field than you are. Interesting poll. I don't know what people out there think is the most important thing to them when they're buying a coin. For me, the most important thing would be authenticity, and the second is that it generates that interest for me. It has to be something that interests me. Even though I prefer that Parliament florin on the top left, I wouldn't buy it because I just don't collect them and they don't interest me. But it is the one that I prefer. Now, hello to people that are watching this later on YouTube. I did have a question over there about clamshell errors. So I thought I'd just run over that quickly before we close out today. That's not a clamshell error that you can see there. It's a split planchet error. Split planchet error is where there's some sort of impurity or gas bubble in the metal of the coin. That gas bubble or impurity has been rolled into there when the blank has been rolled out, and it causes a failure in the bonding in the material, and the coin splits in half. And you can see there that there's a 20-cent piece, and this is what's called a mated pair. So this coin has split in half at some point during its life, and someone has managed to keep both halves together. And if you mate those two halves together, they do mate together quite nicely. And if you look closely at the split halves of that coin, you can actually see some striations or lines running parallel to each other. That's the direction that the metal was rolled out when the blank of this coin was made, and the gas bubble or impurity that was in here would have spread out along that axis as the metal was rolled out. Now, what happens when you're at the edge of the gas bubble and the impurity, and the metal is bonded properly, and so perhaps part of the coin is bonded correctly and the rest of the coin isn't bonded correctly? Well, then you get what's called a clamshell error. And that's where the coin is sort of hinged on one side by correctly bonded metal and open on the other side. I've got a couple of examples here to show to you. First, there is a 1975 50-cent piece. You can see at the top there how one side has clearly opened up. I think this one was forced open. Usually people force them open, sometimes sympathetically, sometimes not so sympathetically. This one was not done very sympathetically. I believe that it was clamped and then someone has prized it open. So why is it called a clamshell? Well, because it looks like a clamshell opening up, obviously hinged with proper metal on one side and comes apart on the other side because the planchet is split. The other one I wanted to share with you is a 20-cent piece. This one has been opened up a bit more sympathetically, just slightly, to show that it is a split planchet. So it's a 20-cent piece, and you can see it's hinged on the right side of the obverse there and is opened up to the left side. So an interesting clamshell error there. Now, in Australian coins, the decimal coins at least, you primarily see split planchet errors for copper nickel coins. Primarily copper nickel coins from the 1960s through to the mid 1980s. It's very unusual to see one after that time. So clearly there was something in the processing of the copper nickel alloy that was used to make the coins in that period that led to these impurities and gas bubbles. You very occasionally see it for copper or bronze, I should say, bronze and aluminium bronze coins, so 1 and 2 cent pieces and $1 and $2 coins very occasionally. $1 coins, I've seen one split planchet $1 coin, which is not many, and a couple of 1 and 2 cent pieces, which again is also not many. Again, it must be something in the metal processing that happens that way, whereas like split planchet coins, the copper nickel coins, we would buy a few a year, probably even more than that, more than a few a year, you know, maybe one every 3 months. We see 5 cent piece split halves quite often. So interesting area of collecting, and if you happen to see a split planchet 1 or 2 cent piece, or a $1 coin or a $2 coin, and the price seems right to you, the value is correct, and it has eye appeal, and it's not damaged, and the condition is good for your collection, then it's probably worth grabbing one of those up, because like many things in coins, if you don't take your opportunities, then you will regret it afterwards. So that's a clamshell coin. Thank you to the person on YouTube who asked that question last week. I'm pleased to be able to answer that for you. Right, that's it for this week. Apologies again for the technical difficulties. Turns out that when you switch off the Windows updates, that doesn't include the Intel operating system updates. So it was today's years old when I learnt that. So that's what caused the problem today. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you to Peter for the graph. Thank you for everyone who's asked the questions, and we'll be back same time next week. Happy collecting, and bye for now.